I made 10 new Pokémon Room moves. We currently just have Trick Room, Magic Room, and Wonder Room, which reverse the speed order, disable items, and flip defense and special defense respectively for 5 turns. Trick Room is really the only one that's worth using, unless it's a Xerneas format where Magic Room has a niche, but overall, I think rooms are a really cool concept that deserves some exploring. So, I made this community post to get some ideas, and got a lot of responses, almost double what I got for the one on Dexited moves, so huge thanks to everyone who contributed. I'll be going roughly in order from most to least balanced, and honestly, I didn't think super deep into the competitive implications of each move, so I'm sure there are some broken interactions that I didn't think of. First up is Mystic Room. This room would be the ability equivalent to Magic Room, where it disables the effects of all abilities on the field for 5 turns. It would have 0 priority like Magic Room and Wonder Room, so it could have increased priority if used by a Prankstermon. Obviously, there would still be some exceptions for form-changing abilities and as one for some reason that wouldn't get disabled. It can be used as an alternative to Weezing's neutralizing gas if you're looking for a strategy that either involves disabling your ally's negative ability or disabling your opponent's positive ability and using an ally whose ability can't be disabled. Since using it as a move delays the ability neutralizing effect until after it's used, you could have a partner with a switch-in ability like Intimidate, any weather setting, or any terrain setting ability that would still activate on that turn. It also allows for more flexibility in singles, since partner Weezing isn't possible, so Regigigas could have more viability, and I'm always going to be in favor of buffs to Regigigas. Since we have an existing room that disables items, and an ability that disables other abilities, Mystic Room disabling abilities is basically a shoo-in of a room effect. Next up is Null Room. This room would cause all Pokémon on the battlefield to lose the secondary effects of their type for 5 turns. 11 types have some kind of defensive secondary effect, with the most notable ones probably being Grass's immunity to Powder and Spore moves, Fire's immunity to Burn, and Dark's immunity to Prankster boosted moves. Because of these immunities, these were common Terra types in Scarlet and Violet, as they not only provided useful resistances, but also provided additional secondary immunities. However, with Null Room, this additional degree of utility to these types goes away for 5 turns. It would have 0 priority, with primary immunities still having their effects, so flying types are still immune to ground type moves, and non-type related immunities would still work fine, so safety goggles would still allow you to be immune to Spore since that's from an item, and Water Bubble would still allow you to be immune to Burn since that's from an ability. Once the room runs out, any effects that have already happened will not be undone, so if a fire type was burned while Null Room was set up, it will not be healed once Null Room runs out, and will still continue to have its attack halved and take chip damage. Next up is Power Room. This room would be the attacking stat equivalent to Wonder Room, where it swaps all Pokemon's attack and special attack stats for 5 turns. While Wonder Room has 0 priority, this one I think should have negative priority at -7 because of how much more impactful flipping offensive stats is compared to defensive stats. And while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and say that all remaining rooms will have -7 priority for balancing purposes. It would have 2 main uses that could be used in conjunction with each other, crippling your opponent's offense and boosting your own offense if used on a Pokemon like Sceptile or Dragapult that have better options of their lower attacking stat. By the way, Wonder Room does not flip defense and special defense stat boosts, so those would still go in their normal spots. Another strategy is using it on a stall team, since that would typically involve using indirect damage and chip damage rather than direct attacks that rely on using a high attacking stat, so it screws over your opponent while your Pokemon don't really mind the attacking stat swap. Next up is Escape Room. This room causes all Pokemon on the battlefield to be unable to flee for 5 turns. This is a room whose name is a real-life reference, as escape rooms are basically puzzles in the form of a room where you try to escape a locked room given clues throughout the room. There already exists a very similar move, which is Fairy Lock, that traps all Pokemon on the field for 1 turn, so having negative priority would help Escape Room not just be a better version of Fairy Lock, although it probably still is just a better version of Fairy Lock. Ghost types and Pokemon holding the Shed Shell would be immune to the effect, with pivoting moves and pivoting items working just fine as a way to switch out. I could see this being used as part of a Perish Trap strategy, since instead of having to rely on a single Pokemon's ability of Shadow Tag to trap opponents, you only have to rely on a move that lasts 5 turns, more than the 3 turns that you need for Perish Song. While it would also trap your own Pokemon, with there being a few things that bypass the trapping effect, you could stack your team with some Ghost types or Mons with pivoting moves to be fine. Next up is Rage Room. This room causes the taunt effect to all Pokemon on the battlefield, only allowing them to use attacking moves for 5 turns. This is another room whose name and effect are a real-life reference, as Rage Rooms are places where you can intentionally and safely break and smash things to relieve stress or take out anger. With negative priority, it keeps it from being just a better taunt, and you may have also noticed that I made this move Dark type instead of Psychic type, since Taunt is Dark type. Here are a few strategies where I could see this move being useful. It would prevent all Pokemon from using Protect, and since rooms are not mutually exclusive like weather is with other weather and terrain is with other terrain, it could be used in conjunction with Trick Room to maximize those Trick Room turns, or with Tailwind to maximize the Tailwind turns so your opponent doesn't Protect to stall them out. It could also be used as counterplay to opposing Trick Room, and while it has the same -7 priority, the faster user will still go first. This would be a great alternative to Taunt when up against pairs like Indeedee Ice Rider, where both Pokemon can set up Trick Room and you're not sure which one to taunt. Next up is Inverse Room. This was by far the most suggested idea, and you can probably tell the effect from the name. It inverts the type chart for 5 turns. Inverse battles were a short-lived gimmick from Gen 6, where a few NPCs hosted battles that flipped the type chart. Resisted damage turned into super effective turned into resisted, and immunities do not exist in the inverse type chart, as those also get turned into super effective. Fairy Steel is one of the worst typings in the game, and Bug Grass is one of the best. There is even a showdown ladder for a while, which gave me some interesting insights on how broken it would be. The main issue is the lack of immunities, which normally keeps certain strategies in check. There's now no type immune to Fake Out, and no type immune to Expanding Force, with nothing even resisting normal, and both types that resist Psychic, Fighting and Poison, are hit for super effective by Bug. It would be really difficult to keep track of all these type interactions, and the move select menu telling what moves are super effective would probably be the only thing keeping it from total chaos. Next up is Lucky Room. This room causes all secondary effects to have their chances doubled, essentially having the same effect as Serene Grace or the Rainbow from Water and Fire Pledge. No one really bothers setting up the Rainbow unless you're me trying to find the least likely non-zero chance for a Pokemon to land an attack, but otherwise, it's too underwhelming as a pledge effect to be good, but as a room effect that also affects your opponent, I think it could have some more uses while also being balanced. Flinching is definitely the first secondary effect that comes to mind, and in order to not make things too crazy, let's make Lucky Room not stack with Serene Grace or the Rainbow for any secondary effect. Some notable moves that come to mind are Rock Slide and Iron Head with 60% flinch chances, Discharge with a 60% paralysis chance, Sacred Fire with a 100% burn chance, and Dire Claw with a 100% status chance, 33.3% for poison, paralysis, and sleep individually. Covert Cloak is going to be an absolute necessity to deal with Lucky Room. Next up is Uniform Room. This room reduces all priority moves down to 0 priority. It would only affect positive priority moves, so negative priority moves like Circle Throw and Whirlwind would stay negative, since a phasing move that can be used before other moves if the user is fast enough is quite problematic. Any move that doesn't have priority normally, but gains priority from an ability like Prankster will also be brought down to 0 priority. Priority moves are very common in the competitive scene, so this room would have some pretty interesting implications. No priority Fake Out, Extreme Speed, Sucker Punch, Grassy Glide, Prankster Tailwind, and most of all, no priority on protecting moves. At that point, you probably wouldn't even bother with Protect, because what's the point if it's not guaranteed? Because of that, it would have a similar result to Rage Room, where it forces your opponent out of being passive if they're trying to use a strategy that involves protecting to stall out turns. You could better maximize turn-limited field conditions like weather and terrain as well. Next up is Crowded Room. This room would be a doubles exclusive effect where it causes most single target attacking moves to become spread moves, as the opponents are so close together that attacks hit both of them. You may have noticed that I made this move normal type, so think of it less as a bizarre magical space like most rooms, and more of a literal room that crowds everyone together. Also, I say most single target attacking moves because I'm making exceptions for priority moves so that you can't, for example, target both opponents with Fake Out, and I'd also add perfectly accurate single target moves since the user is focused enough to lock on to just one target. I could see this room having offensive and defensive use cases depending on what you're trying to do. Offensively, it makes single target attackers much more threatening like Urshifu, Chen Pao, and Ogerpon, not like they need it, but just imagine Surging Strikes now being a spread move. These moves would have their damage cut by the spread damage modifier of 25%, and it might be a good idea to make them 50% weaker instead of just 25% weaker for balance. Defensively, it forces all your opponent's moves to be spread moves that can be blocked by wide guard unless they're using priority moves or perfectly accurate moves that wouldn't be affected. Last up is Flip Room. This room flips all stat changes, essentially giving everyone Contrary. If a Pokemon already has Contrary, it gets double Contrary, which flips its stat changes back to normal. I put this at last because I think it's incredibly unbalanced, but could be interesting with the right checks and balances. If it is just a Contrary to all Pokemon on the field, Chi-Yu gets +2 special attack on Overheat, Miraidon gets +2 special attack on Draco Meteor, Ursaluna gets +1 defense and special defense on Headlong Rush, Urshifu gets +1 defense and special defense on Close Combat, and so on. Intimidate raises opposing attack instead of lowering, Icy Wind raises opposing speed instead of lowering, and stat boosts from abilities like the Calyrex Riders as one would drop their offensive stat on a knockout instead of boosting. The only ideas I have to balance it out are to reduce the turn duration to 3 turns instead of 5 turns, or maybe make it not work with attack and special attack or something like that. Let me know if you have any other ideas on how to balance out this crazy powerful room. And those are 10 new room moves in Pokemon. Thanks again to everyone who contributed on the community post. This is my second time turning ideas from a community post into a theory crafting video, so let me know if you want me to do it again with different kinds of moves. If you're wondering how I made these simulations in Showdown, I did a brief overview of how to modify Showdown replays on my second channel for the Dexited Moves video, so check that out if you're curious. I had to get a little more creative this time with some inspect elementing here and there, but overall, the process was the same. Anyway, if you want to support me and my channel, just leave a nice comment. If you want to take it a step further, you can become a member for 99 US cents a month to get a badge next to your name and early video access like all of these lovely people. If you want bonus content, check out my second channel Extra Bell, where I post videos I've scrapped from the main channel as well as more casual unscripted videos. Likes are also one of the ways that YouTube determines if a video should be passed around to more people, so if you feel that this video deserves to be, I would appreciate it. Thanks for watching.